Deep in the Mexican desert, inside a secret, multi-million-dollar concrete bunker, a cartel chemist is laughing. He is staring at a scruffy 20-something kid in an oversized yellow hazmat suit, and he thinks it is a joke. He sneers in Spanish, treating the kid like an illiterate street junkie who stumbled into the wrong room. And why wouldn't he? For 4 straight seasons, that was the narrative. Walter White told him he was an undisciplined screw-up. His parents kicked him out onto the curb. The entire Albuquerque underworld treated him like an expendable lackey who just happened to be riding the coattails of a 50-year-old chemistry genius. Except, Walter White isn't here. Walt is 1,000 miles away with a fractured face. Gus Fring is standing silently in the corner, staring down a cartel death sentence. And this kid is handed the stirring paddle alone. He doesn't flinch, he doesn't beg. Instead, he slams his hand onto the stainless steel counter, looks the cartel's top scientist in the eye, and tells him to clean his filthy floor before he even thinks about cooking. Breaking Bad was marketed as the story of a mild-mannered genius descending into a monster, but the real story underneath it all was how the kid everyone wrote off quietly became the most capable survivor in the entire underworld. When Walter White first pulled Jesse Pinkman into his web, Walt laid down the ground rules with pure, unadulterated academic arrogance. You know the business, and I know the chemistry.
But you know the business, and I know the chemistry.
To Walt, Jesse was nothing more than a disposable set of hands, street-level muscle. But Walt had an ego the size of New Mexico and zero common sense. If it weren't for Jesse, Walter White's criminal empire would have lasted about 72 hours. Walt had the seed money, sure, but Jesse had the street reality. Jesse was the one who tracked down the RV off the grid. Jesse was the one who understood street corner territory, and Jesse was the one who repeatedly warned Walt about pushing weight too fast, knowing that real drug dealers don't play by textbook economic theory. Walt wanted Jesse to be a ruthless killer. When Skinny Pete got robbed, Walt handed Jesse a gun and demanded he paint the streets red. Instead, Jesse walked into a squalid trap house, used psychological leverage, rescued a neglected child from a living nightmare, and let an urban legend about a crushed ATM do all the heavy lifting for him. He built a terrifying street reputation without ever firing a single bullet. Then came season 3. Jesse is fresh out of rehab. He's broke, he's beaten down, and he decides to cook. In a low-rent garage, using basic, second-rate equipment, Jesse brews Walter White's signature blue meth completely on his own. When the DEA seizes a bag of it, Walt is dragged in to inspect the evidence. Walt is convinced it's garbage. He expects an amateur knockoff. He looks at the lab report, and his entire world stops. 96.2%. Jesse didn't just copy the recipe. Jesse had mastered the science. Walt didn't bring Jesse into Gus Fring's multi-million-dollar super lab out of loyalty, or pity, or friendship. He brought Jesse in because Jesse was producing cartel-grade purity in a garage, and Walt's ego couldn't handle the competition. By season 4, Gus Fring realizes something Walt never could. Jesse isn't dead weight. He's raw, unrefined instinct. Gus sends Jesse to Mexico to cook for Don Eladio's entire cartel syndicate. The pressure is suffocating. If the cook fails, none of them leave the compound alive. The cartel chemist tries to humiliate Jesse, asking him how he synthesizes phenylacetic acid from raw precursors. Jesse doesn't stutter. He tells him, "I make it from barrels with a B on them. If you don't have that, you're wasting my time. Now go mop the floor." Jesse cooks. The sample goes into the spectrometer, 96.2%, right on the nose. Moments later, when Gus poisons the entire cartel leadership, panic breaks out. Bullets start flying. Walt isn't there to scheme his way out. It is Jesse who grabs a gun, shoots their escape route clear, and drives a bleeding Mike Ehrmantraut and a dying Gus Fring out of the crossfire. By the time Season 5 rolls around, Heisenberg believes he is an untouchable god. But every time the Empire hits an impossible wall, it isn't the Nobel-caliber chemist who figures out the solution. It's Jesse. When Gus's encrypted laptop is locked behind 3 feet of concrete in the Albuquerque police evidence locker, Walt wants to storm the precinct with guns. Mike says it's suicide. Jesse speaks up from the back of the room. What about a magnet? A junkyard electromagnet mounted to a rental truck, ripping the evidence room apart through the brick wall without a single drop of blood spilled. When they need 1,000 gallons of methylamine from a moving freight train, Mike says it's impossible. Walt is fully prepared to murder the train crew. Jesse comes up with the heist of the century: bury a water tank beneath the tracks, pump out the chemical, and replace it with water pound for pound, so the shipping scales never register a deficit. Clean, flawless, 0 casualties. In the final stretch of the story, Walter White makes his ultimate mistake. He assumes Jesse is still just a rattled, emotional burnout who can be bought off with a hug and a bag of cash in the desert. He thought he could manipulate Jesse forever. He was wrong. Jesse pieces together the ricin poisoning. He doesn't fall for Walt's fatherly speeches, and when it comes time to take Heisenberg down, Jesse doesn't challenge him to a shootout. He attacks Walt's only real god, his $80 million and his pride. With a single fake photograph and a phone call, Jesse outthinks the criminal mastermind, baiting Walter White into a frantic, unhinged drive across the desert, straight into federal handcuffs. Proving everyone wrong didn't give Jesse a throne, it gave him scars. It gave him a wooden cage, heavy chains, and months of unspeakable torture at the hands of Jack Welker's gang. But look at how the story ends. Walter White dies alone, bleeding out on the cold floor of a meth lab, cradling the stainless steel tanks that cost him his family, his soul, and his life. Jesse Pinkman breaks his chains, steps on the gas, smashes through the compound gates, and disappears into the quiet snow of Alaska. The only one who walked out of the Heisenberg fire with his humanity still intact.